See, there's two sides. There are two parts of this to this question. The first is the question about the BPL itself. The problem that many people who work on the field have identified is that there is under-inclusion of people who ought to be recognized as being BPL. And the idea of fraudulent entries is something that is spoken about a lot, and we know of course it exists. It exists in every database anywhere in the world perhaps, but certainly here, where the numbers are so huge. But also I think a lot of these, from researches that my friends have done, have to do with ineligibility rather than with fraudulence. That people are on databases because they have not taken themselves off databases. At one time, the ration card used to be our primary identity. We used to walk around with it as the one way by which you could get, by which you could get a house on rent, by any transaction you wanted, by which we would get ourselves bank accounts. The ration card was one such. So it was a document you retained whether you used it for collecting rations or not. Even after we became ineligible, these are things that we've retained. So if you're weeding those out now, that's got nothing to do with the BPL. What has to do with the BPL is a greater earnestness from the state to want to reach the people who need the kind of support that the state should be offering. And therefore it was a problem of under-inclusion. The UID keeps talking about fraud people being on the database and having to remove people all the time. That's their primary interest. So that's one set of problems. On the cash transfer, the UID makes it appear like the UID is a magic wand. When you get the UID, the banking system will open up and the whole country will be covered by banks, bank branches, banking correspondents, and an extreme amount of efficiency, which will deliver cash at the doorstep of every person. The fact, however, as anybody who's been in this country, who's read any report in connection with this country and who's gone to any place will find, we've had, especially from rural areas and in the urban spaces in areas where you have slums and squatter settlements, these are places where you do not have banking services reaching. Banks are not interested. Banks are doing business. They want people who have a lot of money. They are not interested in the poor. The transaction cost for them in relation to every poor person is far higher than they are willing to bear. Now they are being forced to come into the so-called financial inclusion system, and you have now people who, you've got the same kind of banking structure you had before. Now, of course, you want to open it out to corporates. So again, corporates can come and control the money of the poor. So you have no banks, no branches. You have a banking correspondence system which is being talked about, which was tried in 2006. And in 2009, the RBI, Reserve Bank of India, produced a report which said that the banking correspondence system has failed in this country. You have big bankers telling you that 80 to 95% of accounts opened through banking correspondence are dormant accounts. Nobody operates them for a range of reasons, because banking correspondents don't reach, because people don't use the banking system in that way. There are a range of reasons why, and that hasn't even been analyzed. So what it does tell us, and this is something I think various people who've been following the UID have told us, that it's not like these systems will work because you have the UID. The UID needs the excuse of these systems to get enrollment. That's it. So in that sense, the financial inclusion question is a fraud in a series of ways. One is that while they're talking financial inclusion, actually they're talking about what they are attempting to do is to dismantle the service structure. To do that, you need to be able to show that you're doing something else in its place. And cash transfer is precisely that. Once you say you're doing cash transfer, you say, it's better. And I find it most offensive that they use the poor as their launching pad, and then they use terms which they would never, like they say the poor have no use for privacy, but look, we are giving autonomy to the poor by giving them the money, and then they can use it in any way that they want. So this, speaking with the tongue which has no, which is amoral, is part of the problem of this, because the financial inclusion question is not a question of not having an identity. It is a question of not having banks being interested in the poor. It's a question of banking services not reaching where the poor are. And it's a question of the banking correspondence system having failed. So if you're just resurrecting that in the discourse and not changing anything in the on the ground, it's an extraordinary kind of falsity to achieve ends which are unconnected with what you're telling the people. There's a language that's being manufactured in this process, like they call something the micro ATM. It is micro, all right, because all it is a machine, handheld machine, on which it will tell them how much money there is in their bank, and it will, it's a question of recognizing it as a biometric reader. But you have this person who is sitting there controlling that machine, who knows how much money you have, and who will hand the money over to you. The fundamental protection that you have with an ATM, where nobody outside of that machine and you at that time knows how much money you have and what you're taking out of it. The fundamental protection that you have, that a banker can be penalized and made liable if they were to divulge information about you to anybody else and use it in any other way. All that is lost in this. It's not an ATM at all. It is not automatic. And it does not provide the privity between the person and their account. It brings in an agent, and a third person is what we are constantly saying we need to get rid of. So instead of having the person who's, for instance, the person who's done the work, getting their wages from the NREGA, the Rural Employment Guarantee field, now they have to go through getting an UID, getting a bank account, that the banker has to send a banking correspondent, the banking correspondent has to acknowledge that this is the kind of your biometric works, and that they will hand over the money correctly. So you're creating layer after layer of obstacle to people to realizing what is theirs. This is not a facility. This is using it for completely different purposes. The day that they actually have banks keen about working for the poor, and also remember, every one of these adds costs to the system. If you're going to have a banking correspondent, it adds a cost. If you're going to have a handheld machine that has to be carried around and then regularly replaced, there's a cost. If the bank has to monitor, monitoring costs are huge. So this is not a costless process. The money will go from somewhere. It's just that it won't go to the poor, it will be going to somebody else.